Canada is preparing its defense for a total war against Trump and is already working with the worst-case scenario on the table: economic pressure, trade breakdown, and a possible military crisis in the Arctic and along the largest land border on the planet.
When Donald Trump threatened other countries, they gave in and signed terrible agreements that he imposed on them. But what Trump was imposing on us was the end of our national sovereignty.
Mark Carney's government accelerated military exercises, increased investments in the North, sought new partners, and began to reduce dependence on the United States. The reaction gained strength after Donald Trump's public threats to turn Canada into the 51st state, using economic force against Ottawa and questioning the line that separates the two nations. Now, reports have emerged that Trump also threatened to abandon the 1908 agreement, which helps demarcate the border. Even without a public order to invade, the Canadian political class began to treat the rhetoric as a real risk. The plan already includes patrols over thousands of kilometers of ice, new spending on radars and fighter jets, as well as an international bank to finance the military industry. Outside of Washington's direct control, what was Trump aiming for by attacking Canadian sovereignty? Why did Ottawa start training without fully trusting Washington? How would Canada react if the pressure reached its territory? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward and no-nonsense content, consider subscribing, because here we have videos like this every day. According to reports published by the Wall Street Journal, Trump allegedly threatened to abandon the 1908 Boundary Convention, which is used to demarcate parts of the border between Canada and the United States. The treaty did not create the border by itself, which also depends on previous agreements from 1908, 1818, and 1846. But breaking this mechanism would produce an immediate crisis. Trump already called the border artificial and said that Canada should become the 51st state. The private threat, if it happened as reported, shows that the provocation was not limited to speeches in front of the cameras. Charlie Angus, former New Democratic Party MP, said that Canada faced a serious threat to its sovereignty and needs to maintain constant vigilance. Angus said that questioning the border would create room for provocations. He also accused the Trump administration of using drugs, terrorism, and crime at the northern border as political justifications against Canada.
But what Trump was imposing on us was the end of our national sovereignty.
The accusation carried more weight because American authorities really pressured Ottawa for migration control, fentanyl trafficking, and border security.
The sheer tyranny of distance on the northern border and the lack of cooperation from previous federal administrations continuously drive violent crime. Now, we're focusing on this and are actively calling in state and local law enforcement in that region. But, it's Canada that needs to take action because they're producing up there and sending it here. I'm not going to discuss whether we should make them the 51st state, but they're our partners up north. More than 300 known or suspected terrorists crossed illegally into this country last year. And they weren't just illegal immigrants, but terrorists. 85 came in through the northern border.
On July 1st, 2026, the United States government refused to extend the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, starting a 10-year period that could lead to the end of the pact without a new round of negotiations. Annual trade between the three nations amounts to about $1.6 trillion, and Canada relies heavily on the American market. It is this dependence that Carney is trying to reduce. For Ottawa, negotiating with Washington now means preventing the Canadian economy from being used as an instrument of political submission. The preparation has reached the military level. Between January and April 2026, about 1,300 Canadian soldiers took part in the nation's largest operation in the Arctic since 2007. One of the patrols covered more than 5,000 kilometers on snowmobiles between Inuvik and Churchill, facing temperatures close to minus 60 degrees. The exercise practiced movement with resupply, communications, and defense in a huge and strategic region. The official objective involves threats from Russia and China. But the environment changed after Trump's statements about annexing Canada, controlling Greenland, and reducing commitments to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Canada still depends on the United States for radar, intelligence, and air defense through the North American Aerospace Defense Command. The government plans to invest 87 billion Canadian dollars over 20 years in modernizing the system and securing the Arctic. Ottawa is also reviewing the purchase of 88 F-35 fighter jets and is considering reducing American involvement with Gripen aircraft manufactured by Sweden. The discussion involves parts, maintenance, programs, and authorization for use. In a crisis with Washington, relying entirely on American technology would leave Canada exposed. Tension increased when the Pentagon suspended its participation in the Permanent Joint Board on Defense, created in 1940. Washington accused Canada of spending too little and delaying military decisions. Carney downplayed the impact on air cooperation, but the suspension showed that trust had decreased on both sides. The United States demands more spending, while Canada fears that shared systems could also become a source of pressure. Mark Carney started saying that the former special relationship with the United States has turned into a weakness. In April 2026, the Prime Minister stated that Canada needed to regain control of its own future and strengthen its independent capability. The government expanded agreements with Europe and brought the proposal to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization meeting in Ankara. The proposal for a new international defense bank. 9 nations initially joined the Defense, Security and Resilience Bank: Canada, Albania, Belgium, Greece, Latvia, Luxembourg, Romania, Turkey, and Ukraine. The institution aims to raise up to £100 billion, about $134 billion, to finance factories, equipment, and military projects. The headquarters will be in Canada, and operations are expected to begin in 2027. The initiative shows how Ottawa wants to build paths outside of direct dependence on Washington. Canada's pressure campaign made even more sense during the North Atlantic Treaty Organization meeting in Ankara. Trump once again said that Greenland should be under the control of the United States and stated that Denmark does not adequately protect the territory.
Greenland is a big problem for us. And the other thing is that when we invited them to join us, they refused. They didn't want to be with us when they could, but we've always been there for them. We've already spent more than $1 trillion in a very short period of time, $1 trillion to protect those countries from Russia, and that has absolutely nothing to do with us. We have the ocean, but that's something long-term, and they haven't treated us well. Does Mark understand? Greenland is vital for Zeeman University, but not for Denmark. In fact, when Denmark was invaded by the Nazis, in less than a day, Hitler defeated them. In a day, he took control, and they asked us to take care of Greenland. Actually, we took Greenland, and then stupidly we gave it back. We shouldn't have given it back to them because we're the ones who need it. We need it for the protection of the world, not just the United States.
The Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, responded that her government would defend every part of the kingdom, including Greenland. The Greenlandic government also stated that the island is not for sale to Canada. Trump's pressure on another Arctic ally serves as a warning that territorial threats may recede, but they return when Washington finds a new opportunity. Ottawa is training in the Arctic, strengthening infrastructure, seeking technology outside the United States, creating international funding, and reducing its commercial exposure. The pressure has even reached a new physical link between the two economies. The United States and Canada reached an agreement to open the Gordie International Bridge on July 27, 2026. After a dispute over tolls and American participation, Canada financed the construction. But it agreed to share the net profit with the United States and to submit future toll changes for approval by Washington.
They turned against us with the tearful bitterness of bullies who got punched in the nose. Donald Trump said we were the most unpleasant people he had ever dealt with. Pete Hoekstra, his manipulative ambassador, called us unpleasant. Howard Lutnick, Canada, you are terrible. Pete Navarro attacked us. They were furious that we stood up to them. But this shows that by refusing to open the Gordie Bridge, by refusing the Kuzma, and by continuing to manipulate and threaten us, they haven't changed their minds.
The bridge will facilitate trade between Windsor and Detroit. However, the agreement shows the scale of the battle. Trump pressures, Carney resists. And every road, contract, or treaty has become part of a bigger dispute for control over the relationship between the two nations. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially using the Pix key shown on your screen. We are an independent channel focused on keeping you informed with the truth. Your contribution helps us keep going.